Hello and welcome to Dan and Dave Discuss Boxing. This is our first ever podcast.
Yeah, podcast episode, yeah.
Whatever you like to call it. To me, I'm just a bit old-fashioned, it's a video. Anyway, my name is Dave, this is Dan, professional boxer and an walking encyclopedia on boxing. I'm just a humble e-commerce entrepreneur, but I do love boxing and I love talking about it. And to kick off with, I think Dan's going to mention what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the best British boxers of all time. Now this is obviously going to be a controversial topic. There is no right answer. We're going to take a few different things into our thought process, but we're going to shoot through a couple of the honourable mentions and then get into a top 5 that we've kind of whittled down. Now, before we get started, I think it's probably wise to tell you how me and Dave know each other, because you might be thinking, how are these two together?
Yeah.
We actually met in Twist Gym, didn't we?
Twist Gym in Epsom, near the famous racecourse, and Dan has trained me quite a bit and is a fantastic trainer as well as a boxer. But yeah, that's how we met.
Yeah, it's how we met through Twist Gym in Epsom. So yeah, and you've also been to a few of the fights as well.
Yeah, I saw Dan fight in York Hall. Fantastic.
Yeah,
very impressive.
Even sponsored the shorts as well, so I'll always remember that. The hair raise product.
I just like to point out that this man is undefeated, dominated all his fights.
Yeah,
that was my eye anyway.
Right, let's go. Let's crack on. So we're going to go into the best British boxers of all time, in our opinion. So I think we should probably start off with a couple of honourable mentions. I mean, you've got a couple written down there on the notes. Now, as I've already said, this is completely opinion based. We did go over this ever so slightly before, but when I'm doing my lists, I get loads of grief on Instagram all the time from people telling me I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I always say
there'll always be someone that disagrees, but that's fine.
That's life.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, and I always say that when I'm doing these lists, I don't take it too seriously. Yeah. You know, it is literally just a case of giving these fighters a bit of exposure, highlighting their career highlights and achievements, and just really having a bit of fun with it.
It is. That's what it's all about. It's just opinions and, you know, talking about all of our favourite boxers. Maybe not necessarily the best boxers in some people's eyes, but ones that we remember and we enjoyed watching.
Yeah, and lots of the old timers do get forgotten in today. So we've tried to whittle it down to a couple of the old school, the really old school guys, and some of the new guys. But let's start firstly with one of the most iconic heavyweights in British boxing history, Henry Cooper. I mean,
Henry Zamma.
Henry Zamma, that big left hook. I mean, that absolutely shook Muhammad Ali. Then Cassius Clay to his core. I mean, never won the world title. Won the British title twice, I believe, off the top of my head. Just a great fight. It's such a shame because his eyes used to just completely.
I know. It is a shame because, well, he obviously troubled Cassius Clay as he was then. But yeah, the ref had to stop it because his eye was too badly damaged and it wasn't anything else really.
Yeah, no, I mean,
he was doing quite well.
Yeah, it was coming towards the end of I can't remember the exact round, maybe the 4th or 5th. Yeah. Henry Cooper lands this gigantic left hook, bang on Cassius Clay's jaw.
Really didn't see it coming, did he?
Oh, literally completely shakes him. He's actually caught by the bottom rope if you watch that again. Yeah. And then the bell rings. Yeah. Clay walks over to his corner and he is out of it. Angelo Dundee, the legendary trainer in Muhammad Ali.
He bought a bit of time, didn't he?
Bought a bit of time. Yeah. Tore the glove. Tore the glove. Bought a little bit more time.
That's quite clever, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, these are the old school guys, the tricks of the trade. You know, there was a little tear in the glove, and he just tore it a little bit more, bought a bit more time, and Ali went out and stopped Cooper on cuts.
Yeah, but he was good. Henry Cooper was, you know, he had a few good wins, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was strong. Very strong.
And there's the big controversial Joe Bugner fight as well towards the end of his career, kind of the changing of the guard. And Joe Bugner was a good fighter. Never really quite gets the love and the praise that a Henry Cooper gets. But I mean, Henry Cooper was just the nation's sweetheart, and his twin as well was also a good boxer.
Yeah. And was he
twin brother?
Do you know what? I remember they would wheel out his twin brother on like some random TV chat show, whatever. oh, Henry's got a twin brother. And I just thought he was just, I don't know, an electrician or something. I didn't know he was a boxer as well, because he was very humble and quite shy, I thought. When
both of them were, to be honest. Both of them were. I mean, just lovely guys, and kind of encapsulated that British spirit, I think, which is why they're so popular.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he was a boxer.
Yeah, he's a boxer as
Oh,
well.
well, we could battle on for ages, but yeah, I mean, some of the ones that wouldn't necessarily make our top 5, but there's obviously fighters that I remember from when I was, I'm obviously a bit younger than Dan, just a little bit, a couple of years. But when I was a kid, there's Lloyd Honeyghan, and he was some fighter. He was quite tenacious, wasn't he?
Oh, Lloyd Honeyghan, yeah. Well, it's that. Yeah. Lloyd Honeyghan was actually a 2-time world champion, but everyone remembers him for his massive upset win against Don Curry.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, I mean, like, Don Curry was, I think he was number 2 pound for pound. Yeah. He was an amateur record of something like 400 wins to 4 losses. Yeah. Just ridiculous. Like, he was just behind Sugar Ray Leonard, I believe, or not just behind, the second coming of Sugar Ray Leonard. And Lloyd Honeyghan went out there and just, probably created a top 5 upset of all time.
Yeah, it was a huge upset. I remember it.
Yeah.
Gosh. Who else? And then there was.
Well, speaking of upsets, we could segue. We could kind of create a segue to another honourable mention. I don't think he'd done enough in his career to kind of be at that level of a top 5, but we got to talk about Randolph Turpin, man.
Yeah, well, you see, this is it. Dan mentions these names, and I have to say that when he's first mentioned Randolph Turpin to me, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I don't think I know that one. But
Randolph Turpin was
you are a walking encyclopedia on boxing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you look at this man here, Sugar Ray Robinson, the greatest boxer of all time. So Sugar Ray Robinson went 39-0, I believe, until he was beaten by that man there, Jake LaMotta.
Yeah.
So he was 39-1, 40-1 maybe, I'm not entirely sure. And then he went on this massive streak as welterweight champion, beat dozens of Hall of Famers, and got his record up to 129-1, I think, with 2 draws. Don't quote me on that.
It's a lot of fights.
Yeah, he went on a 91 fight unbeaten streak. And then Randolph Turpin was matched to fight him because Robinson was doing a tour of Europe, fighting the best European fighters. And Randolph Turpin beat him over 15 rounds to claim the middleweight title then.
Did they call him the Highwayman?
Who's that? The Robinson?
Randolph Turpin.
Oh God, I don't know. I'm not sure, but he would ultimately lose the rematch. But yeah, I mean that win.
So what year was it?
Oh, it's in the 50s. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, but if you watch the fight,
check that out,
there's highlights of it available, and you just see Randolph Turpin out hustling Sugar Robinson. And Robinson goes over to him like, "Yeah, you beat me." And then he comes in a rematch, and Robinson absolutely smashes him up. Yeah. But nevertheless, but it's sad story with Turpin. Actually, he actually ended up having a pretty sad ending to his life. He took his own life, and it's one of those tragic boxing stories where you get those highs to highs, and
some boxers when they retire, they don't know what to do with themselves, and they find it hard. But
I think that's sportsmen in general.
Yeah, definitely. You can understand it. Is this sort of adulation and excitement, and how can normal life match up to that?
Yeah.
Anyway, before we go on to the top 5, should we mention 1 or 2 others?
Let's fly through.
Prince Nassim.
Yeah.
Wow, you can say what you like. Some people hate him. I personally loved watching him fight. Just so thrilling and exciting. Yes, he was cocky, but he could back it up. He was quite probably the most unique style I've ever seen. And he did have some good wins. I remember that one in New York, Kevin Kelly, and that was, what a fight that was. I mean, that was ding dong, wasn't it? I mean, on the floor, then he just, how many times did he get knocked down?
I don't know.
2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
I know a couple of them was touching the glove, but it's still knocked down.
Yeah.
But then he just flattened him.
That was the beauty of Hamed. I mean, as you've already touched upon, one of the most unorthodox fighters ever seen. But that Kevin Kelly fight, it just is him in a nutshell. Firstly, you've got that crazy ring walk.
I know, that's what I was going to say. Do you remember that? It's in New York, right? He should be like a little bit humble, but no. It took about half an hour. He's on the magic carpet, wasn't he?
I think that was the Pereira fight, the magic carpet one. I think he come out to Thriller, Michael Jackson.
Jeez,
I can't remember off the top of my head.
And then everyone was getting so pissed off.
He was great. He was punching he had so many of them. I can't remember the particulars, but he was like walking through a graveyard to Michael Jackson Thriller, dancing, punching skulls off the top of the headstones, But yeah, got into the ring. I mean, Hamed, he gets a lot of stick, but he actually has a very good record.
He does. I mean, he only lost once, but sadly that was enough for him. He didn't want to fight again. But
well, he had one more fight after. He just didn't look that good. That Barrera fight, I mean,
did shake his confidence, didn't it?
Oh yeah, but he was a confidence fighter with that style. I mean, coming up, he boxed the likes of Steve Robinson. That Kevin Kelly fight, you know, just absolutely. Just ridiculous level of excitement. Wayne McCulloch, proper good fighter. Ingle as well, Paul Ingle. And you got to bear in mind that Marco Antonio Barrera is one of the all-time great Mexicans. And Hamed, at that point of his career, he left Brendan Ingle, and he didn't have that same focus.
He did prepare, did he?
He was losing weight. He had to lose a ridiculous amount of weight for that fight.
Well, so there you go.
Nevertheless, though, it's one of those brutal beatings.
It was, but he was exciting in his prime. Didn't last long, did he? But
no,
he wasn't. It was only a few years he was there. But
you know what, though, another thing we got to touch upon with Hamed is that raw punching power.
Oh, for someone so small, I mean, these punches would start near the floor, don't they?
And he had big legs. Like, he's a small guy, but his legs were solid. So he'd be down there.
And that's where a lot of it comes from, isn't it? The power comes from the core and the legs.
That twist through the shot, you load the leg up, you explode from the leg.
Yeah. And that's. I mean, just shows you the technique.
Yeah.
All right, let's mention one more.
Well, let's mention the ones we got written down without going into too much detail. We got Tyson Fury, who I think right now his career is on a bit of a weird path with the Usyk fight, but the win over a dominant Vladimir Klitschko, I'm going to say 3 wins over the most dangerous heavyweight Deontay Wilder. In order for Fury to make the top 5, I think he's got to beat Usyk to become undisputed and probably be a little more active defending it against good fighters. We also put Nigel Benn, who didn't crack the top 5.
Nigel Benn, I mean, for me, you know, that was before you were born, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But
most of these
I was a teenager watching him fight, and he was so exciting and very super aggressive style. Didn't let up, and just was involved in a lot of really good fights.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, that Gerald McClellan fight, I picked that one is.
It was brutal and obviously a pretty tragic ending for McClellan, but that was some fight. Yeah,
that fight, I mean, McClellan's vegetated now, he's in a really bad way. I think he's 90% deaf and completely blind. But Gerald McClellan, the G-man, he fought Julian Jackson, who's the hardest puncher
Julian Jackson,
time.
He could knock people out.
He got cracked, mate, but he knocked him out. McClellan was the man.
I suppose we're going off topic because these aren't British fighters, are they?
No. They're good ones.
It just shows you this is exactly why we're doing this, because you could just go on forever. I mean, there's so much stuff to talk about.
Ricky Hatton,
I mean, the Hitman.
Yeah.
His body punches were something else, weren't they?
So aggressive, but one of the best and most underrated, technically sound aggressive fighters. Now, don't get me wrong, he wasn't the greatest defensive fighter, but you mentioned the body punching there. In some of the ways Hatton was able to pivot his way in and tap elsewhere to create openings is proper high level stuff. And I remember when he dropped Jose Luis Castillo, who's a great Mexican, known for his body punching, and he absolutely just done him with a body shot. But fell short against the top guys.
He was. You couldn't argue with his determination, and he just kept coming. Didn't he? He's another one of those boxers that just keeps on coming at you. And that's hard to fight, isn't it, when someone's got that?
Well, he was like something like 42-0 or something going into the Mayweather fight, and a lot of them have been tough fights coming through the domestic scene, and you know.
I remember watching it. I did actually kind of think he could win, but didn't happen. My mate Dan, he was at the fight. He was
in Vegas.
He was actually there.
But that's one of the things with Hatton is the army he would bring over. That's what separates him from any other boxer from Britain. No one's ever been able to. Maybe Frank Bruno.
Maybe. No, he did have a big following, didn't he? All right, so should we talk about the top 5 then?
Let's talk about the top 5. Let's just name a few of the ones that are there. We won't go into detail. I think we have to also mention Amir Khan, who has been a great servant of the sport. David Haye, who is prime.
You know, he did have some good fights and some good wins. You know,
menacing cruiserweight. So explosive, good punch. And Khan had some great performances too, and plenty of heart. But let's go on to the meat of the bones.
All right,
the top 5.
All right, I mean it's going to be controversial, but this is what we think
Yeah.
We'll start off with number 5.
Well, number 5 was me because I'm a massive fanboy, and now this is going to be controversial, but I'll explain my choosing. Dave also agreed, but at number 5 I've gone with Carl Froch. In my opinion, Carl Froch is one of the most underrated boxers to come from this country.
I think it's fair to say that. I do.
Yeah.
People give him a bit of stick for, I don't know why, to be honest with you, but you look at his pedigree, can't argue with it.
I mean, yeah, the thing I love about Froch is in an era, not necessarily his era as such, but no, that's his era, yeah, because the best fights weren't happening around that time. When you look at like the Mayweather Pacquiao's, you know, Froch was in his pomp around that era.
Yeah.
So in a time where the best fighters aren't fighting each other, Froch is fighting the best time and time and time again. And the only man to beat Froch outright is Andre Ward, who is a generational talent, potentially one of the greatest fighters of the 21st century.
Yeah.
But Froch was tough, man.
He was really tough. Really tough.
His career has it all. I mean, he started out, obviously come through the domestic scene, fought at York Hall as well, Froch. Yeah, lots of the top UK guys did.
A lot of people start out there, don't they? I mean, in your professional career, it's kind of the go-to venue, isn't it, as you're starting out?
It is. I mean, York Hall, for people that don't know where York Hall is Bethnal Green in London. It's just this old kind of... It's not glamorous, but it's just one of these places that everyone's boxed there. Anthony Joshua's boxed there. I'm certain Hatton's boxed there. Even Johnny Tapia, like the great Mexicans, boxed there.
Yeah.
James Toney's boxed there.
Really?
Yeah, James Toney boxed in the prize fighter there.
I remember when I was watching you, Chris Eubank was sitting there right in the front row watching.
I'm sure Chris Eubank's boxed there as well. I mean, it's literally housed everyone. But yeah, anyway, on to Froch, because we were talking about Froch having boxed there. Froch obviously came through that domestic scene, but then he moved on. He boxed so many good fighters, man. I mean, if we're just talking about his world title reign, he had this great fight that no one talks about against Jean Pascal. And Jean Pascal was a really good light heavyweight. Jean Pascal was I think he was Canadian off the top of my head.
Okay.
That might be wrong, but that was brutal when he had a perforated eardrum. Then there was like this really dramatic fight against Jermaine Taylor, who was a big American star.
Yeah, he was something else.
He beat Hopkins, Jermaine Taylor, and Froch was dropped, down on the cards, needed a knockout in round 12, pulls it out with 25 seconds to go.
So I'm gonna have to watch that fight again because that's what year? Can you remember what year that was?
It's probably about 2008. That might be wrong. But
I'd like to rewatch that one.
I made a video about that on my Rocky series, and that was the one that blew up the most, just because it was so unbelievable.
Yeah.
The fights against Mikhail Kessler, oh mate, they're just unbelievable. Like,
Danish was it?
Denmark, Danish,
Same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. Arthur Abraham, another top fighter. He absolutely schooled him with a jab. George Groves, like to get through that that adversity.
Yeah.
Like one of the things about Froch as well is chin.
Oh yeah,
mate.
He could take a punch, couldn't he?
He could take a whack.
Yeah. The George Groves, there was quite a lot of bitterness with them too, wasn't there?
Yeah, but now they're like best mates.
Are they? Really?
Yeah, they do podcasts with each other every week.
Oh,
Yeah. But I mean, like, and the final punch of his career in front of 80,000 at Wembley is just the perfect way to end your career. I mean, just a little feint, a hook, bang. Yeah. So yeah, number 5, I went with Carl Froch.
Yeah.
Number 4,
Chris Eubank we got, haven't we?
Yeah, Chris Eubank.
You know, when I remember watching him fight live, and he did look, most of the times, he looked pretty invincible, I thought. He had that sort of aura, didn't he, of like, very, very hard to beat, and
very
strong, stamina, had so much stamina.
Yeah.
And he had a good chin as well, didn't
he? I was just going to say that similarly to Froch, a great chin. Like a lot of the younger generation that are seeing kind of like more of the memes of Chris Eubank now, because you know he's got that persona.
You know, let's say he's a little bit eccentric.
Just the touch,
But that did. Some people get upset about that, but I thought that was quite funny myself.
Oh, I mean, it made him one of the most unique characters in the game. But I think what that takes away from some of the people that never watched it is how tough that guy was.
super tough.
I mean, like,
And his physique was impressive as well. I mean, he really
he's
is
fit.
solid, strong,
fit.
no fat or anything. I mean, just totally ripped and
Just like getting the ring
rock
like this.
hard. Yeah, he'd get in and and then he'd do this, wouldn't he?
Yeah, that's the. You know what? That is so unique.
Yeah.
And like, as someone that's been in the ring, like, you're not thinking about pissing around at all. You're just to go in there like a Nassim Hamid or a Chris Eubank could do that. It's just so unique.
So
but
funny.
you look at the fights against Michael Watson, which is another one, has ended in tragedy in that era, in that division.
Yeah.
But the fights with Nigel Benn, you know, the war with Joe Calzaghe, like, because that was towards the end of his career as well. He gave Joe Calzaghe a real tough fight.
It was, but he did struggle with Steve Collins, and you had a funny. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a story because it's actually true from what you know.
I've heard that so many times that Steve Collins went and saw a hypnotist. Now, don't quote me.
I've never until today. I never heard of this story, but
So apparently, I can't remember whether it's the Nigel Benn fight, because Steve Collins beat them all, man. And I mean, Steve Collins, if we're talking British fighters, needs to be in this. I mean, I don't know if he's Irish or Northern Irish. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but Steve Collins was just.
I think he's Republic Irish.
I'm not sure either, but he was lost my train of thought. Yeah, he basically in prep to one of the fights against either Eubank or Ben. I've heard a story just from years that he went and see a hypnotist, and the hypnotist kind of tricked him into not feeling pain. So he kind of psyched Chris Eubank out. So every time he was hitting him, because Steve Collins was tough.
Yeah.
And like shots would just bounce off him. He used to train with Freddie Roach as well, funnily enough. And I feel like he done him mentally.
Yeah.
But I've actually got a cool story about Steve Collins at one of my fights.
Right.
Yeah, he was I boxed at the Wellington Barracks,
and
this kid come down from Manchester. So like, you know, it was a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
If someone comes down from Manchester for just like a show, you know they're going to be good. And Ian Wright was in the crowd, Darren Parker, loads of people, Steve Collins. And I had this absolute tear up, like Steve Collins-esque, against this strong kid, and I won.
So this was an amateur fight?
Amateur fight, yeah. And Collins comes up to me after, and he's like, "You're a fucking tough kid."
I never knew that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was buzzing. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Ian Wright come up to me as well, and he went, "Danny!" I felt like a celebrity that day. It was crazy.
That's so cool.
Yeah. But Chris Eubank at number 4.
Yeah. Fair dues. And then number 3.
Well, now this is going to be a bit of an underrated one. Some people are going to turn their nose at this.
Yeah.
Number 3, we've gone with Ken Buchanan, who recently passed away. May he rest in peace. The greatest Scottish boxer of all time. Just so underrated.
Yeah.
I mean,
a tough nut.
Tough nut, lightweight champion of the world. I mean, great wins against some of the great fighters. The Ishmael Laguna fight stands out to me as some of his best wins. But man, that guy gave Roberto Duran, and let me tell you something about Roberto Duran, a lightweight, invincible.
Yeah.
Other than he had
a proper legend in boxing.
Oh mate, like top 5 all the time, and he gave him a tough fight. And Duran actually won that fight by hitting Buchanan in the balls. Yeah.
Do you know what? I think I remember seeing that. I think there was a documentary about it, wasn't there?
More than likely, yeah. It was a real. Duran was really dirty in that fight, like hitting him low, and
was that getting desperate? You think? Because
just the way he fought him.
Right.
Because Buchanan had this lovely jab. He was a lovely boxer, Buchanan, and Duran needed to rough him up.
Right. Yeah.
And it was quite a close one. It wasn't a demolition by any stretch, but Duran was just wild and but not wild in the sense that he wasn't controlled. It was all completely controlled. It just. This hands of stone legendary puncher, and but Buchanan was a great fighter, man. Yeah, and it kind of links to Josh Taylor, who, you know, I mean, Josh Taylor is another Scottish boxer who isn't on this list, but I think if he continues to do what he did before the Jack Catterall fight, I think we're going to talk about him in the same breath.
Yeah. I mean, he has got a bloody good resume already.
Undisputed champion as well.
Yeah. But maybe he's a bit, in a way, a bit too young still to feature.
Yeah. But yeah, number 3, Ken Buchanan.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Well, Calzaghe. I mean, he's got to be there, isn't he, in the top 5, because undefeated. Yeah. A lot of fights as well, not just
46.
And some big names and impressive opponents.
Yeah, Calzaghe's got it all, man. I mean, if you go into his days at super middleweight, we've already touched upon Chris Eubank. He had that big win against Chris Eubank early on, where he really had to dig deep and test himself, and he passed that test. Now, the thing that is both impressive about Calzaghe and the thing people pick on him for is his reign at super middleweight.
Yeah.
He made 21 defences of the title, which is an all-time record for a decade. 21 successful defences of the title. And that is just unprecedented. I mean, that's amongst the all-time, that's like not far off the Joe Louis level of title defences. Really. But he never fought outside of Europe, and he never really fought many top...
He never fought in America.
He did towards the end of his career.
Right, yeah.
Well, this is kind of how he redeemed himself in the eyes of many. I thought he was class, but his critics, as say, will pick on the fact that he's a lot of the people in there weren't pushovers, so to speak, but they weren't the top guys. But towards the end of that reign, he got in with the likes of Mikhail Kessler at the Millennium Stadium, which is like a massive stadium. Kessler, that is a great fight. Kessler fight, had to adapt in that one. He goes on and fights Bernard Hopkins.
I remember that one.
Hopkins has his Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
Where he fights like 10 good guys and gets up 7 of them. Oldest world champion still at 49. But
so that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, some people think 40, you're over the hill, but I don't think in boxing you are, especially, I mean, when people kind of diss Joshua's record, he beat Vladimir Klitschko, who's 41 at the time, he was over the hill, but he wasn't. He was still bloody strong.
Yeah.
I mean, look at his physique, and he was very fit. He was still very good, a very good, dangerous opponent. So I don't get this 40 is like over the hill in boxing.
I mean, it all depends on how you look after yourself. I mean, if you look at some particular... I think Klitschko's a good case. I don't think Klitschko was as good as he was in his prime. I think that's...
No, he was past his prime, but...
Still a threat.
Dangerous.
Looked after himself. Yeah. I met Vladimir Klitschko.
In the...
he had his shirt off, yeah. Oh, I tell you what, mate, that was like 2 years after the Joshua fight. He is a unit. Yeah. And like was
he 6'6" as well, was he?
6'5", 6'6", but he's like 6'5" wide. Honestly, his chest is a joke. Like I was standing next to this guy like that. It's the only time I've ever been starstruck. Yeah.
And you don't realise how big they are until you see them.
Yeah. But like, it's funny because, you know, it's this big guy and he's sitting there like that, just chilling. And you're like, that's the longest reigning heavyweight champion in history. Wow. I was like, oh. But yeah, no, Calzaghe's got some great wins and also good wins against the likes of the American guy, Jeff Lacey.
Oh, Lacey, yes, of course,
That's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen. Yeah, Lacey was
quite. He almost looked like heavyweight, didn't he?
Yeah, he was like they called him the super middleweight or the light heavyweight Mike Tyson. Yeah, because he's coming out of America, knocking everyone out. The next big thing. Yeah, and Calzaghe slapped him about, man. Like it's one of the most brutal beatdowns in history.
I remember that.
Yeah. Calzaghe was the real deal.
Yeah. No, I think rightly so in the number 2, undefeated. But number 1.
Well, before we get to number 1, there's 2 things I want to touch on.
Right.
I would love to have seen Froch versus Calzaghe because a clash of styles. I mean, that's one that gets talked about a lot these days. That is one that gets talked a lot about.
Yeah, what would have happened there?
Who would you favour?
I think it would go to points. I think Calzaghe on points.
I could see that, yeah. I think you'd favour that. I don't think anyone has an easy night with Froch. Yeah. I mean, even Andre Ward, who did clearly win, but you know, Froch is tough, man. But yeah,
very tough.
Before we get to number 1, let's touch on our GOAT honourable mentions because we've kind of gone more new school. But for those that follow the Instagram page that I run will know that I'm a massive boxing nerd.
Dan's got a fantastic Instagram page, big following, some big names following him too. Carl Froch, one of them.
Sugar
Ray Leonard. Well, I mean, you've got just boxers, Larry Holmes. So it's if you get a chance, check out Dan Morley's Instagram account because there's some really fantastic videos you've done there. And
thanks, Dave.
Very interesting.
I appreciate that, and I mean, I just love it. And you know, all I'm doing on there is just sharing my passion. People are just interested in the sport, which is
and you can see that it comes across.
In our GOAT debate, our honourable mentions, we're going to go back to the 1910s. We're going to go to Jimmy Wilde. And now, I mean, these 2 guys I'm going to mention.
It's a great name, isn't it, though?
Jimmy Wilde. Oh, mate, you heard his nickname?
No.
The Mighty Atom.
All right.
And the Ghost with the Hammer in his hand.
Oh, brilliant.
That's a nickname, isn't it? I mean, Jimmy Wilde, he was a flyweight, Welsh.
Yeah.
And he went 93-0 in his first 93 fights.
Nuts, isn't it? That's just nuts.
Just ridiculous. And he was fighting top challengers. And then I think, I might be mistaken here, he was the first ever flyweight champion. Because it's such a small weight that in the early 1900s, they weren't necessarily, it wasn't necessarily a weight division that would receive world honours.
Yeah.
So the first flyweight world champion. Ring Magazine have Wilde as the third hardest puncher of all time.
Really?
Yeah, finished with like 120 fights, 3 losses, 99 knockouts, just ridiculous. All-time great. Lost the title to the Filipino Pancho Villa.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he was. There was
So what kind of age was he when he retired then?
early 30s.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Quite old, isn't it?
Yeah, got
Well, I
marked.
suppose in those days it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean they just used to fit so many fights in back then. He got mugged when he was in his 60s and died of the injuries.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
really
terrible.
Sad, isn't it?
Jeez.
And another honourable mention, we're going to mention the old great 1800s Bob Fitzsimmons, boxing's first ever 3-division champion.
Another great name.
Bob, yeah, what
I
a
love
name,
these
I know.
names.
These old school names
Yeah.
are just different gravy. Middleweight champion, light heavyweight champion, and weighing 165 pounds, the lightest heavyweight champion in history. Yeah.
It's like, what's that? 12 stone? Maybe?
It's middleweight. It's just shy of super middleweight.
Yeah.
So Bob Fitzsimmons and Jimmy Wilde are our 2 honourable mentions to the #1 spot. They probably are over our #1. Let's be real if we're going historically. But for us, our #1,
Well, it's the man, Lennox Lewis.
Lennox Lewis. Whew, what a fighter.
You know, he was a commanding heavyweight,
Yeah.
undisputed, which, you know, not many people can say that these days.
No. And beat everyone he ever faced.
He beat all of them. He lost 1 or 2 fights, but he came back and everyone that he ever fought, the people that at that time, arguably, were probably better heavyweights. There was a better era
Oh, it's a great
for
era.
heavyweights than it is now.
Well, let's go off the top of my head. Who he beat? Evander Holyfield. He fought him twice. Probably beat him twice. Mike Tyson. Frank Bruno.
Bruno, yes, of course.
Tommy Morrison.
Yeah,
David Tua.
yes.
Whoa, David
He
Tua
was,
was
he
a big.
was quite a ferocious fighter. And
Yeah.
he did.
He scored him. Scored him
Yeah,
with the jab.
he did, didn't he?
Vitaly Klitschko.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. That one was a bit shaky, but
Yeah.
he stopped him on the
Yeah,
cut
yeah.
towards the end of his career. There's just so many. I mean, I could keep going on, but there's too many for me to remember. It's his resume is just a joke. The only one he didn't fight, and it's not of his own doing, is Riddick Bowe.
Yeah.
But he beat him in the amateurs.
Did he? All right. Okay.
Yeah.
But he had quite a long career as well.
Lewis.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
He's-
think he wanted the Tyson fight, didn't he? And
Yeah.
Tyson obviously got arrested,
Yeah.
and that fight had to be delayed until. Let's be real. Tyson was well past his best, but so was Lewis.
Yeah.
And he was just so well rounded as well. I mean, his losses to Oliver McCall, where he got knocked out brutally,
Yeah.
and Hasim Rahman.
Of course. Yes.
But he came back and beat.
But
them
he
both.
came back and he really.
Oh, he walloped
did a
Rahman,
number on him, didn't he?
Oh mate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was just so well rounded. Not the most exciting.
But that's the sign of a champ. When they lose a fight that they shouldn't have lost,
Yeah.
and then the very next rematch, they just show how it should have been done.
I think it was the Rahman fight. He was filming Ocean's 11,
Right.
and his head weren't really in
Yeah.
it when he got knocked out.
In a way, it's kind of what's a little bit disappointing with Joshua losing to Andy Ruiz, and then the rematch. You're kind of hoping he'd do a Lennox Lewis, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But he did everything right because he didn't lose. He won his belts back.
Yeah.
And he did fight a good fight.
Yeah.
Tactically, but
Yeah.
people wanted, especially heavyweight, they wanted to see him just
When we're
knock him
talking,
out. But
I think-
it's not always the way, is it?
No. I mean, I think Joshua does deserve to be one of the honourable mentions on this list. And he's only lost to top guys. Now, when he was supposed to fight Jarrell Miller, who tested positive for the banned substance, they got Andy Ruiz in late, who's this fat Mexican guy.
But that doesn't matter. He's
No, yeah.
bloody good fighter.
That's what I'm going to say. it was a lose-lose for Joshua because if you'd watched Ruiz before then and you knew boxing, you knew what a threat he was.
I remember before the fight, I was thinking, because I didn't know much about Ruiz, and I thought I want to see what this guy's all about. And I was thinking, oh shit, he's pretty decent.
He's the real
he's fast, so fast,
powerful
for someone
fast.
so big. His hands are so fast, and there's power in those hands.
Yeah, and he went out and boxed Joseph Parker before he boxed Joshua, and you watch that fight. I think Ruiz won that fight, so he was a threat. It was a lose-lose for Joshua. So and he's lost to Alexander Usyk, who's like a generational all-time great talent. So
yeah, I think Joshua gets a hard rap for his. He has only been able to fight who's put in front of him.
Yeah,
and they're not all bad. I mean, there's some decent fights there.
That Klitschko fight is a great win. And no matter if he's past his prime, he had to show courage and guts. The Ruiz fight,
and one of the most entertaining fights to watch. I mean, jeez,
all-time classic. The Ruiz
uppercut for everything.
Turned Vladimir Klitschko into a giraffe. He extended his neck by
that was
6
just
inches.
Watching that live was like, wow.
Yeah, no, I mean the Ruiz rematch. Ruiz was grossly overweight. I mean, he was a lot in a lot worse shape than the first fight, but he went out and done what he needed to do. Povetkin's a good win.
He did a number on him.
Yeah.
Parker. See, again, people, because that went to points, didn't it?
Yeah.
And people gave him a hard time, but Parker's bloody good. He's got a good chin.
Yeah.
So
no, I mean,
that's Joshua, but Lewis, number one.
Yeah, Lewis is the man.
Yeah, I don't think anyone could really argue with that, can they? British fighter. I mean, arguably one of the best, not just British heavyweights. Got to be in the top 10 of heavyweights of all time.
Top 5.
Yeah,
top 5. I mean, we could save that video for another day on top 10 heavyweights.
Yeah.
But I mean, Leonard Sears is just an all-time great. And
do you know someone I just remembered?
Go on.
Who he wouldn't be on this list, but Dennis Andrews. Do you remember him?
Nah, not off the top of my head, nah. You've caught me off guard there.
Oh, really? I've found a boxer that Dan has known. I've probably got his name wrong, that's why. But anyway, I'll have to re-look that up. But anyway, if anyone else knows, just feel free to put it in the comments.
Can't forget to shout out John H. Tracy as well. Beat the great Jose Napoles at welterweight.
Okay, well, you got me there, but your knowledge is impressive. And with that, I think we'll kind of wrap it up, shall we?
Yeah, no, perfect,
But thanks so much again for talking. I love talking boxing with you because I learned so much.
No, mate, it's a pleasure. Likewise, I just love talking boxing. It's great to see your enthusiasm for it.
It's fantastic. So I hope you enjoyed this first episode, and the next one we'll be talking about what?
Well, we're going to talk about our favourite boxers.
Favourite boxers from childhood.
Yeah, from like the eras we grew up in, because I could talk about a lot of the old fighters, but I don't know them as well as I did watching the ones I watched growing up, and likewise with yourself.
Oh, for me, as a teenager, people like Barry McGuigan and Mike Tyson.
Don't ruin it, Dave.
Just little preview. But the excitement, it was. And in those days, only 3 or 4 channels, so boxing was when it was on, it was big
viewership. But make sure you stay tuned. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share.
Exactly. Thank you.
Sweet. Perfect.